Hello, proactive sports gamblers. Welcome to my first ever spread predictions for the NFL Week 1. Now, I know what you're thinking. Week 1? It's miles away. What the hell are you doing making a predictions video right now? Odds came out on DraftKings. Let's be proactive. You can place bets right now on DraftKings. I'm not sponsored, by the way. Okay, so we're just going to run through all the matchups for Week 1. I'm going to give you the spread, and I'm going to give you my prediction on each game, as well as a little bit of analysis. Starting off the NFL season, Thursday Night Football, the Super Bowl's champion, Kansas City Chiefs, will be hosting the Detroit Lions. Now, in this game, the Chiefs are 6.5-point favorites. And while I like Detroit, I think they're going in a solid direction. Week 1, I think the Chiefs make a statement. They're the reigning, defending, undisputed Super Bowl champion. I think they cover the 6.5 points, and I think they blow Detroit out of the water Week 1. Now, had Detroit not had like 3 different players, including Jameson Williams, suspended for gambling, my opinion might be a little bit different, but I think Detroit's going to struggle out the gate and figure it out towards the end of the season. So give me the Chiefs minus 6.5 for Week 1. Up next, we got the Houston Texans going into the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens are 9.5-point favorites. While this is a very large point spread, I like the Ravens to cover the 9.5 points. I think Lamar Jackson, after he got that huge contract, I think he's going to live up to it. I think the Ravens have a very good year. I think that offense, we saw what it looked like without him last year. It was non-existent. The Ravens defense, they're a good unit, and the Texans, while I like what the Texans did in the draft, they got their guy in CJ Stroud. They traded back up to get Will Anderson. I think they're also heading in the right direction, but I do not see them winning many games this year. I do not see them being competitive. Give me the Ravens minus 9.5. Up next, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars heading into the Indianapolis Colts. And the Jaguars are 3.5-point favorites. And I believe this is a very easy one. I believe the Jaguars cover the 3.5 points. The Jaguars last season, they started out very inconsistent, but they finished the season strong, won a playoff game against Justin Herbert, and went toe to toe with Kansas City in the divisional round. I think the Jaguars are a very good team. I think they're heavily underrated and slept on. Trevor Lawrence, he's a franchise quarterback. I don't care what anybody says. He's going to be a great one in the league. And 3.5 points, that's not a lot to cover. The Colts, they drafted Anthony Richardson. They had a solid offseason. I don't think they're ready yet for the playoffs or anything further than that. But I do think the Colts are headed in the right direction. That being said, Jaguars cover 3.5 easy here, nearly a guarantee. Up next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals are 2.5-point favorites in this game, and I like them to cover that 2.5 points. The Bengals were one call away from going to the Super Bowl, and I like their chances of beating Philadelphia last season in the Super Bowl. The Browns, I don't have faith in Deshaun Watson. I don't think that offense is going to look very good, or at least to the level that they think it's going to be. Nick Chubb, great running back. There's no doubt he can get it done. They got some weapons over there. They have a legit defense headed by Myles Garrett. But I think Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, it's too much. It's too much for the Browns defense to handle. I don't see their offense keeping up. Give me the Bengals minus 2.5, also a guarantee. Up next, you got the Tennessee Titans taking on the New Orleans Saints. Now, the Saints are 3.5-point favorites in this game. And again, I like the Saints to cover those 3.5 points. While Derek Carr, he is no Drew Brees. Let's get that out of the way. He is no Drew Brees, but he is a solid quarterback. I believe he's better than Andy Dalton. He's better than Jameis Winston. He's better than anybody that they've had there since Drew Brees. And the Saints roster all around, it's pretty good. You got Alvin Kamara, and that defense is pretty good with Marshawn Lattimore as its head. The Titans, it's really just the Derrick Henry show. Who knows who's going to start week 1 at quarterback? Could be Will Levis, could be Ryan Tannehill. I feel bad for Malik Willis. He didn't really have a shot, but I think he's going to be out of there. I don't see the Titans having a very good year. I see the Saints having a decent year. Give me the Saints minus 3.5. Up next, you got the Carolina Panthers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Falcons are 2.5 point favorites. And again, going with the theme, I like the Falcons to cover those 2.5 points. I think the Falcons had a very good offseason. They signed a lot of key players at key positions. They had a good draft. And while the Panthers, yes, they did trade up, they got their quarterback Bryce Young. They also gave up a lot to get him. They gave up first round picks for the next 2 years and star wide receiver DJ Moore. While Adam Thielen is good and they signed him, I do not believe he will be as effective as DJ Moore was for them. Panthers are kind of in a rebuilding phase. This year is really all about Bryce Young and his development. I don't see them having a very good year. I see the Falcons surprising some people and being a wild card team, maybe even winning that division because it's kind of weak. So in this one, give me the Falcons minus 2.5. I believe nearly a guarantee. Up next, we got the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Washington Commanders. Now the Commanders are 6 point favorites, and last season I really did think the Cardinals would have a decent season. I thought that at the very least they'd be a wild card team, but through the gate that team struggled even with Kyler Murray. And once Kyler Murray went down, that offense was nothing. I love Colt McCoy, but he can't. He is not as effective as Kyler Murray is. The Commanders, they had a decent season. They really did. They were not putting in Carson Wentz away from making the playoffs. They should have just stuck with Taylor Heineke. He's in Atlanta now. I think he's going to do good there. But the Commanders, Commanders, I think have a solid roster. I think it's underrated, and I don't see the Cardinals doing anything this season. I'll be surprised if they win more than 2 or 3 games. That being said, give me the Commanders minus 6 point. I know it's a large point spread, but I don't think the Cardinals can compete at all. Up next, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the purple incarnations of Satan, the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Vikings are 6.5 point favorites here, but I don't think the Vikings will be nearly as good as they were last year. Now, last year, they won a lot of one-score games, which has kind of been the opposite story from previous years of the Minnesota Vikings. But the Vikings lost a lot of players on defense. The only two veterans I believe they have there now that are experienced are Harrison Smith. We know he can play. And Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter, he's a great pass rusher. Other than that, they lost Kendricks. I don't like the linebacking core. They lost Darius. Cornerbacks are weak. They lost Pat Pete. That defense was already struggling. Losing all those players, they are not going to be good. And I know Tampa Bay, they lost arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. But 6.5 points is a lot of points to cover in this league. And I don't believe the Vikings are as good as DraftKings odds are making them out to be. So I think the Vikings will win the game, but I like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to cover the spread. So with the 6.5 points, I will take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Up next, we got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the New England Patriots. And the Eagles are favored by 4.5 points. Again, I like them to cover those 4.5 points. I'm going with the favorite team here. The Patriots, there's just too many unknowns for me. Mac Jones, I don't believe in him. I do not believe that the Patriots fully believe in him either. I think that once this season is finished, they'll be looking to replace him through either free agency or most likely the draft. The Eagles had a great season last year. They nearly won the Super Bowl. I don't think this game is close. Give me the Eagles minus 4.5. I am very confident in that pick. Special one to me. Got the Green Bay Packers going into Soldier Field to take on the Chicago Bears, the classic rivalry game. And the Bears are favored by 2.5 points. Wow. When was the last time the Bears were favored against the Packers? 2018? It's been a while, but it's what it is now. No Aaron Rodgers. Gotta show people what Jordan Love is all about. Now, you see the jersey. I'm not going any other way. I like the Packers to cover 2.5 points here, but I'm gonna explain why. Let's start with the Chicago Bears. Offensively, they showed some potential. Justin Fields, he can be electric back there. He's got legs. He can run very well. There's no denying it. He's just as effective as Lamar Jackson when it comes to being a runner. As a passer, not the most consistent quarterback in the world, but he made some good plays. Now, to the defense of the Chicago Bears, It was not good last year, and I don't think any Bears fan is going to disagree with that. And I do not believe that they did enough in the draft and free agency to vastly improve that defense. So I see them having defensive struggles again this season, and I think that's going to cost them a lot of games. Again, I like what they're doing on offense. I think focusing on offensive tackle in the draft, it's a big need that they had to fill for Justin Fields, and they did it. So credit to the Bears. But I think the Packers, they're gonna be effective with their ground game. I think Love makes a few good plays, and I think it's a close game. But I think the Packers win it, and I think they cover the 2.5 points. So give me Green Bay plus 2.5. Up next, you got the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Denver Broncos, and the Denver Broncos are 3.5 point favorites. If this is last season, despite all the Raiders' struggles, I would take the Raiders with the points, no question. But that was because, as much as I love him, Nathaniel Hackett did not work in Denver. But for whatever reason, him and Russell Wilson, they couldn't figure it out. But now, Denver has Sean Payton, and every NFL fan who is familiar with Sean Payton should know what he brings to an NFL team. He is an offensive genius. He can make just about any quarterback look good. He, at a time where people were doubting Drew Brees, he turned him into a Hall of Famer. And we all know how great Drew Brees is. I think Sean Payton is going to help Russell Wilson become who he used to be. And I think that the Broncos have a solid year. I don't think they're winning the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to get that far, but I do think they make the playoffs and have a somewhat decent run. So in this game, give me the Broncos minus 3.5 against the Raiders. Up next, we got the LA Rams taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Now in this game, the Seahawks are 5.5 point favorites. This one's a little tough. I like Geno Smith. I think he had a great season when there were hardly any expectations for him to have one. I think that overall the Seahawks roster, it's decent. Maybe could use a better running back, maybe a better O line, but it's not terrible. The Rams, they really fell short of expectations last season. For a team coming off a Super Bowl, I have never seen a fall that hard when they didn't really lose anybody. They lost Von Miller. That was a big loss on defense, but offensively, that team should have been very good. But Matt Stafford with his elbow, there was definitely something wrong, and it's a shame to see because Matt Stafford finally got a good team around him, and he was able to win the Super Bowl, and you really could only enjoy it one year. That being said, I think Matt Stafford, I think he'll be better than last year, but I don't see him returning to that MVP Super Bowl winning quarterback form. But I think he's good enough to cover the point spread here. I think the Rams cover 5.5 points. Getting Cooper Kupp back, that's going to be huge. I think that defense still has a lot of talent on it. And Sean McVay, great coach, goes without saying. I think the Seahawks win the game, but the Rams cover 5.5 points. So give me the Rams plus 5.5. Up next, we got the Miami Dolphins taking on the LA Chargers. Now, the Chargers are 2.5 point favorites here, and I think this is a fairly easy one. I think the Chargers cover those 2.5 points. I say it's fairly easy, but there's a lot that goes into it. When it comes to Miami, offensively, they got a lot of talent there. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that's probably the best wide receiver duo in the league, I think. I think both of them are electric. They both have speed, and they can both break away just like that. Dolphins' running game leaves a lot to be desired. I think Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, they're good, but I don't think they're elite. And Tua, I think he's great when it comes to short and intermediate passing, but his deep passing leaves a lot to be desired. Also, his health, it scares me. Three concussions in one season, very dangerous. I thought there was a decent possibility he retires, but I'm glad that he was able to stick it out for his fifth year option and get money. He deserved it. But when it comes to the Chargers, Justin Herbert, I believe he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I think that he's going to have a very good season, redeem himself for the playoff failure that happened last season. I think the Chargers defensively, they got better towards the end of the season, but it was a liability in the first half of the season. I think Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are going to go very well together this season, and I believe the Chargers, in a close game, beat the Miami Dolphins by 3. So I will take the Chargers minus 2.5 here. Up next, we got the Dallas Cowboys in a rivalry game taking on the New York Giants. Now, the Giants are the underdogs here. The Cowboys are favored by 3 points. It's a bit of a tough one. I think the Giants will win this one. I think that the Cowboys, coming off that playoff loss in embarrassing fashion, Mike McCarthy, I don't know what you were thinking, having Zeke snap the ball. No idea on that one. They lost Zeke now. While Zeke was a shell of himself, he was not the running back he once was. He was still a big part of that team. Tony Pollard is good, no doubt, but I don't see the Cowboys having as good of a season this season. I believe their defense is good. I'm not completely sold on Dak Prescott even after the big contract. I know he's good. I don't think he's worth 40 million a year. I, Subject to disagree though. Who knows what a real quarterback is worth nowadays? The market price just keeps going up, but I think the Cowboys could have done better when it comes to quarterback. But the Giants, Brian Dable, great coach, had a great first year. I think Daniel Jones, while again not a franchise guy, he's serviceable. He's maybe a little bit lower than Dak's level, but the Giants found a way to win a lot of games with him, and I think they continue to with the help of Saquon Barkley and an improved defense. Kayvon Thibodeau gets after Dak Prescott, and I like the Giants to cover. I like the Giants with the points, +3, to beat the Cowboys. Up next, last game of the week. This one hits close to home. We got the Buffalo Bills taking on the New York Jets in MetLife Stadium. Now, the Bills are favored by 1.5 points. In this game, honestly, it's a toss up. I believe both teams have something to prove. The Jets traded a lot to go and get a 39-year-old quarterback. You may have heard of him. His name's Aaron Rodgers. Pretty good. And the Bills, they did not finish last season very strong. Josh Allen threw a lot of interceptions. The offense looked shaky. The defense was cracking. And they got embarrassed in the playoffs by Cincinnati. Quite frankly, they got embarrassed. It wasn't a close game. They got blown out, and it was not a pretty sight. That being said, I do think they will have a much better season this year. I believe the defense gets more consistent. I believe Allen limits the turnovers. I don't believe Allen runs as much this season. He said it in the offseason. He's starting to feel it. I think they got to be more careful with him and run him selectively. That being said, I am going to take the Jets +1.5 here. I think that Rodgers is going to have a very different team around him with Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall. I think that running game and wide receiver one connection, he hasn't had a wide receiver like Garrett Wilson since Devontae Adams. I believe Garrett Wilson was clearly the best rookie wide receiver out of last year's class. Even though I love Christian Watson, objectively, Garrett Wilson was better. I believe the Jets' defense is a top five unit in the league. A lot of talent there. And I think that they're able to shut Josh Allen down long enough for Rodgers to build a lead and hold it. So I will take the Jets +1.5 in this game. All right, and that's all the game spreads for week one. I hope that all of you betting on DraftKings win as much money as you can, and I'll see you for week two.